Resident Evil 4 was a really popular game, but it was polarizing at the time of release. It's all part of this long history. On one side, Shinji Mikami and his team wanted to go off in a different direction, and he was apparently ashamed of the older games and their limitation. Which is funny, because they could have easily went with a third-person camera. They wanted first-person, but it was not easily doable at the time. You didn't have to use Alone in the Dark as inspiration. Clearly there was something you liked there. Can we stop with the bandwagon of fixed cameras and tank controls are awful? Multiple other games like Silent Hill have showed us that you can create an atmosphere more easily when you control the camera. You know, like a movie. That thing that game devs try to copy all the time. It's an acquired taste, but if you give it a chance, you'll like it. Most people who criticize that whole style simply weren't happy it didn't play like other games and would try to play Resident Evil like it was a shooter. Which brings us into the next era. Resident Evil Remake sold well when it was re-released on PC and 7th to 9th gen consoles. Originally it sold poorly because it was on GameCube, a platform that had the reputation of being for kids. Heck, in elementary school I remember the edgy kids telling me that it was a console for kids. You're 10 years old, motherfucker! You're a kid! That effort was then followed by Resident Evil 0, and that one just plain sucked, on top of being stuck on GameCube, and mind you, I love the GameCube. Capcom, like most companies, just looked at raw numbers without any context and decided that old school horror wasn't good anymore, and pushed the rest of the series into non-stop action for a decade. It was much later that they came back to horror, and the numbers proved that the style works. Ironically, RE4 Remake is going more that route too, but more on that later. That's when the schism happens. You have the old school fan being told by every outlet under the sun that the style is passé, and the people who never liked RE are now in love with it. I remember back in the day, some people called themselves RE fan while also admitting only having played 4, 5, and 6. It became a shooter with vestigial elements of horror, but a shooter nonetheless. It was horror the same way Quake was horror. The issue of the fans was that 4 was part of the series only in name and didn't deserve to be here. Much later in life I would end up playing both the classic series and 4. It was in college. I was afraid to play it back then. I was kind of a cowardly kid. And because of that, I can tell you right now that your argument of me being nostalgic is mute. I played those games as a grown-ass man. I can say that Resident Evil 4 is fantastic. It's not like the classics, but it's a great game and deserves its dues. It has no right being as good as it is. No, really, it's a mismatch of sporadic ideas, some used only once. They just did whatever the fuck went through their minds. Normally that spells disaster, but it worked. Even to this day, you seldom have arguments against the game. Even the hack game journals were few and far between to say that the original didn't age well during their reviews of its remake. If anything, people thought the remake was unnecessary, especially after the disaster of Remake 3. Now, there is only 2 worries. According to embargo releases, the game is, for one, trying to be more horror now, which is dumb. I accept that 4 is different, that's what made it great. You do you, love. The second elephant in the room is the proclivity of people to spout the nonsense of the day. Let's start with a tale of Sphere Hunter. Can we just take a second to remember that half of what they post on Twitter and YouTube is basically horny posting?
Good guy Nemi. Why are they fist fighting? What is this, Mortal Kombat? Okay, we gotta stop talking about this movie. Maybe I'll make a video on it at some point. For now, I just need to erase it from my mind. Except for Jill, she's attractive. Oh yeah, bad recreation.
It's really hypocritical to have that person then mention that Ashley's costume is gross sexualization. Half of the video thumbnails on that channel are sexy version of the avatar. And let's also not forget that Sphere Hunter cosplayed as Ashley in her old costume for a Capcom event. It's also insane knowing that Sphere Hunter is a porn star. Sphere Hunter was fine until politics got dragged into the videos. That politic has now infected the discourse, and even normie boomer YouTubers try to shame you and brush aside your complaints and strawman you into an argument.
And if your biggest complaint about her in this rebank now is that you can't look up her skirt anymore, well then I don't know what to tell you, only to say that you might want to try to leave the house once in a while.
When someone like Sphere Hunter talks about things being gross and over-sexualization, knowing their past, it just feels like a case of throwing the first stone when you live in a glass house. It doesn't feel like warning others of the dangers of sexualization. It just feels like you're projecting and also trying to ride that money train. Right now, we're on the eve of Remake 4 releasing. I played the demo. I liked it. The game is probably going to be great. The politics in it are probably going to be minor. However, gaslighting your audience and going for the mainstream opinion for clout or revenue will get us nowhere and will only make sure that we keep going down that rabbit hole. If you really want to dive into the topic of Ashley, let's go over some in detail. The people in charge of media right now look like their ideas. Awful. A lot of these people are also middle-aged women who got their posts because of gender quotas. It's not surprising, knowing female gender dynamics, that they want to get rid of competition, and so most girls in modern games are ugly as sin. If you're satisfied with that, fine. Keep acting like nothing is happening and you'll get more of The Last of Us Part 2. Before ending, I would like to perform a quick shout out to the team of the HD fan project. It got the attention it deserves, but news of the remake may overshadow it a bit. It's not just an HD overall, there's also gameplay tweaks, so give it a try, it's pretty fun.